Hello, Donna here. Welcome to my channel, Transcending Trauma. So I'm going to try to tackle the dysregulated nervous system, the beautiful gift from the narcissist. Some sarcasm there. But actually, like any hard thing in life, it's always best. I hate giving the abuser credit, but giving the overcoming the credit and just sort of like pulling out the true gifts that we get from the overcoming, not from the abuse. I hate because subconsciously, if you give abuse credit, like, oh, if this never happened, I wouldn't have learned this and that, you're kind of unconsciously telling yourself, oh, well, abuse births growth, so I'll seek abuse because it enlightens me. And abuse does not enlighten you. Abuse hurts you. Abuse dysregulates your nervous system, which includes your brain. It causes a lot of harm and damage to your life. The overcoming, though, you can receive gifts from that. So, one of the gifts is a horrible gift, but once overcame is a beautiful gift, is the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain. So when we live through trauma, ongoing trauma, we take a hit on our nervous system, and specifically the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes emotions. And then you have the front part of the brain that processes logic and reasoning, which, by the way, does not come online fully until around the age of 25. So, that's why children believe in like Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and that. So, like, be a little easy on kids when we try to use like too much logic on them. They don't have access to that part of the brain fully. Like, that's why it's so important, to look out for kids. They don't have that logic. They don't have full access to that part of the brain. So that gets developed later. But anyway, so what happens after trauma, like ongoing hits to the nervous system, is, and it always makes sense. I love how the organism, the being, the brain, the nervous system, it just knows what it needs to do to create safety. So like even things that are maladaptive and seemingly dysfunctional, they have like a protective core purpose, So when you keep being abused over and over, complex trauma, you go through abusive hit after abusive hit, whether that's verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, any kind of abuse, it takes a hit on the nervous system. All of them do, all of those abusive behaviors. So they all cause biological damage, even the verbal and the emotional abuse, which comes with narcissism. They cause physiological changes to our nervous system. So when the amygdala is overactive, the reason the brain does that, so what happens is in a normal developed brain, the information from the outside comes in first through the frontal cortex. And this, happens, just so quick, just amazing. You think computers are amazing? Our brains, God's work is more amazing than any man's work ever will be. But so like the information instantaneously comes through the frontal cortex, it gets the logic applied to it, and then it goes to the amygdala to have the emotional context added to it. So then the memory is then stored with, the logic and the emotional context. So when you've lived through abuse, the front part, the logical reasoning part of the brain shrinks. And don't worry, we can build that back up. And the amygdala gets overactive. So, it does make sense, right? So that because emotions create action, an emotional context to something. That's why too, like, when we shove down our emotions of hate and disgust, which we need to rise up so we can get away from things that are harmful for us, they have purpose. Emotions have purpose. So when the emotional context gets added to something, it creates action. We all know, like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling, sad, and that's like that adds all that texture to our experience, so emotions have purpose. They create that that action. I mean, if it just went through the logical brain, the brain just thinks. It's just monkey mind, you know? It's just like, oh, yeah. Oh, that person just tried strangling me. That's interesting. I wonder why they did that. You know? So the emotional context says, that person just tried strangling me. That feels terrifying. Get out of here. So there's a purpose. So you see how that's logical that the amygdala would become overactive after abuse, because it's like, oh, I want that emotional context immediately, because I don't want it to go through the logical reasoning part and wait for the emotional context to make my decision. I'm just going to make it quick. I'm going to make it quick. I'm in danger. I need quickness. I've been in danger too many times. Quick, quick, quick. We need quick. So it makes sense, right? That it would, slow this part of the brain down and activate the primal, the emotional brain, the brain that, takes action. Of course, makes complete sense. But, the gift from the overcoming is that because we take the hit to our amygdala and we have the overactive emotional part of the brain, we get to experience a depth of emotions that people that have not suffered get to experience. So because we have that overactive amygdala, like, I know I've cried at a sunset, I've felt like things way, way, way deeper than probably if I had not had the tear or the damage or the overgrowth of the overactivation of the amygdala. So I also got to experience way deeper emotions, which are not just fear, or disgust or anger, which actually get shut off during abuse because the brain shuts those off because those got us in trouble if we felt those things. So we turn those down. But we feel the other things. We feel fear, for sure. We feel the fear and sadness we feel. And we also feel love way deeper, and joy, really, really, really joyful joy, blissful joy, So those are the gifts. But what we want to do is calm down the nervous system, get that amygdala back to where we can control it, where we have the logical mind online, and then the experiences that we have first go through why we want the logical mind, like we can add reason and logic, and then it goes to amygdala for the emotional context, So, I mean, if we're always like really activated, the nervous system is hijacked, again, there's not logic there. So it's hard to focus. It's hard to work. It's hard to do things that you want to do, because that amygdala is really active, And when the nervous system is really heightened like that, that's why, you'll see people that have lived through trauma, they have digestive issues because think the sympathetic nervous system is activated, the fight or flight, freeze or fawn or fix, and the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, is not being activated as often. It's that imbalance. So you'll see digestive issues often, So, it's best to get that nervous system relaxed. And one of the best ways to do that, I just said in the other video, was about noticing when you're getting dysregulated and noticing things that are dysregulating. I mean, that's why often, like, isolation happens after abuse. Most likely the abuser tried to isolate you, and then you start isolating yourself. Some of that can be good. We need some rest. We need some of that, like just everything on a spectrum. We also don't want to stay there because we regulate off of each other. It has been shown. You can look up how people co-regulate their nervous system off of each other. It's how we're created. It's so cool. We regulate our own, but we regulate with others too. Like, think about it. Like, if you're feeling something, say you want to hug, like I can hug myself. There's tips, like you can go under your one armpit. I'm holding the phone and I can't do it. And you can give yourself a hug that feels really good to the nervous system. You can stroke the forearms and that. but just think of how much better it feels to be held by someone else and hugged by someone else. We need both. We need both our autonomy, our separateness, our ability to be able to validate and regulate self, and also get that from others. Doesn't make you a narcissist if, you like having people that validate you and like to build that seed of joy with you, and that hug you and love you and treat you well. So, ways to regulate your nervous system. One, you need to get the toxic people out of your life. You need to. If people dysregulate you, if you think you're being kind to them by helping them, most likely it's more you're enabling, and you're not allowing them to see their own crappy behaviors, because when you stay, you enable. I'm not blaming you for other people's choices. I'm just saying, get out of that. Because I know there's a lot of shaming, and then you feel bad for them and you see their struggle, I could see the narcissist in my life struggle, but was that fair to have the focus just on them? And, it didn't matter what the other family members were experiencing. That's not fair, that's not okay. And that's not regulating to anyone. So, just really that birds of a feather. I know someone told me they hated that, but it is true. If you're around someone that is belittling you and you're choosing, or the sum of your 5 closest friends, or you're picking 5 people that belittle you and devalue you and treat you crappy, and we're used to picking these type of people because if we grow up in dysfunctional narcissistic families, that's familiar, that's family, that feels familiar. So until we bring in our awareness and start really paying attention to our nervous system, we'll keep putting people like that in our life. And when you have 5 people belittling you, you will become the sum of that. You'll feel like shit. Sorry with the swearing again. You will feel very low self-esteem, self-doubt, really not good things. So pay attention to who you're putting in your life and what you're putting in your life and what you're engaging in. I also learned that that empathy is actually more of that primal mind, and that can be very exhausting when you go into the auto empathizing with others, that it's better to pull up compassion instead. Not only is compassion more front mind than empathy, because empathy is feeling with more, and compassion is sort of, I'm separate, but I see your suffering and I'm here for you. They say compassion is actually more action driven. So, when you have compassion, you can be more mindful and more logical instead of going into that back mind and being really empathetic, because now it's called vicarious trauma. Now you're traumatizing yourself with them. Now you're both traumatized. I've seen myself do it. I went to help some people. I heard them fighting out on the street, and I was like, it was a domestic violence situation, and I called the police, and other people did too. And I went to sort of help, because I felt so bad for the situation, and I started empathizing, and I got like caught up in those feelings too. And so I started getting activated. So like just paying attention to those things, paying attention to, what is activating you and dysregulating you. Things like meditation. Now, once you've lived through trauma, meditation is a funny one. I would be careful about doing too many meditations that are sort of very imaginative, because we can use like a lot of denial and magical thinking. And again, like easy on yourself. Like when you grow up in trauma, you do what you got to do to get through it, as a child. And then we can like kind of stay in some like fantasy magical thinking and that. So you got to kind of sort of be careful. Also, we can already tend to sort of disassociate from our bodies. And gosh, I've gone on some amazing trips just in a deep meditative state. But, like disassociation is kind of, we all do it. Everyone, people even that haven't lived through trauma, you do it when you daydream. You're disassociating from the moment and from your body. But when you're kind of prone to disassociating and you go into deep meditation, you can really let go of your body. And when you're trying to recover from trauma, you're trying to connect back to your body. We're already disassociated from it. That's what ruminating is, when you're out of your body and into your head because the body feels unsafe. So so meditation, like mindful meditation, that is, more relaxing, not listening to things that take you weird places, because that's just more disassociating then and magical thinking, and that's not helpful. So, good practicing meditation, like watching your breathing and just sort of, compassion. And at the Buddhist temple that I sometimes go to, they do the loving kindness meditation where it's like, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be peaceful. You tell this to yourself, you tell this to the people that have hurt you, you tell this to the people that you love. This is what you're like putting your focus on. So just being mindful about like the things. All right, it's long, I'm looking at 16 minutes, but just being mindful about the things that dysregulate you, because that is what happens. You end up living in a dysregulated state from narcissistic abuse. You've had your nervous system pinged over and over and over and over again. That's also why it's hard to leave, because you don't have a lot of access to the logical mind. They keep you in that primal active, like that. You can't think, you can't realize you have a choice to walk away. You can't even see your choice when you're drenched in the trauma and the activated, amygdala. You can't even see that you have a choice. So just cultivating that regulation of that nervous system, and just asking yourself, when you go into situations, friendships, intimate partnerships, just things you read, things you engage in, what you look at on social media, is this regulating me or dysregulating me? And I choose regulation, which means peace, joy, you know, calming. All right, peace out.